If you hunt enough, you learn the truth. What you seek speaks a language and knows it well. That's why every Primo's call for everything you hunt is made the right way. We sweat every detail so you get more out of every hunt, and nothing leaves our hand until we know it'll work in yours. Because we don't just make the world's best calls, we speak the language. Primos.
The only shooting stick with one-handed trigger pull adjustments has a new way to keep you at the top of your game. The Trigger Stick Apex. Built for sturdy support that adapts to unforgiving terrain with easy adjustments to make your big shots. With our DuraSteady 3-piece carbon leg design and interchangeable rock-solid clamp, nothing tops the Apex. The Trigger Stick Apex, only from Primos.
But I think this is like 254. Is that what the conclusion that we came to, Steve?
53.
Ooh, 253. See, I knew. See, this is what happens. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do.
My math's correct. 254 would be next week.
Oh, okay. And then would that make 252 last week?
I believe so, yeah, with Sam Thrash.
Okay, all right. Well, and this week is 253 with Greg Staggs. So it's going to be a fun podcast. I'm looking forward to this one. It's a little bit different, not something Greg normally talks about on podcasts, but something that we've been talking about with Greg, and so it'll be kind of cool. But before you do that, you have to deal with us hooligans for a couple of minutes. We're going to give you the lowdown, and then we'll get into the regular podcast. So anything new and exciting? Anything going on? Been shooting the new Bowtech? What's up?
Yeah, just shooting the new Bowtech, watching. Camera's been slow, man. I might have to make some adjustments. But I did. I had a buck show up last night. He ain't no looker. He's a shooter, but he's not. He's not that big. But
right.
It was cool. I recognized him from last year, so it was like one of those return bucks that like, hey, I recognize you. He didn't really put nothing on or whatever, but it's always cool when you recognize a deer from the year before, you know.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, the humidity finally broke, so things are a little bit better. When I got out of work today, I was like, oh man, maybe I can run in, dump a camera, and I'm like, no, it's way too hot.
Snakes.
The snakes. Yeah, the snake. You know what? It's funny is I've been doing kind of a little bit of research on the whole snake thing. They're more scared of you than you are of them. And I'm scared of them, so I hope they're more scared.
Really scared.
Yeah, exactly.
A snake scream like a little girl.
Do you know like a fear factor thing? Like the more you watch them, the more you learn about them, the less scared you are of them.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. That's what I'm trying. It's not necessarily working, but I'm trying it.
I feel like it would be the opposite. Like the more I knew about something, the more it would mess me up.
Yeah, I mean it's either kill a big buck or worry about snakes.
Like if you were, let's say you were prone to be like scared of the dark and like walk into your tree stand in the woods in the dark, would you watch a bunch of like Bigfoot shit?
No, you're right. All right, you're right. All right, never mind. Null and void. This is true. I mean, and you know what? That's a big fear, and I like that fear. I think everybody should be scared about walking into their tree stand because they're not going to go as deep in public. So then I'm by myself.
Yeah,
and I think
bears are getting really bad in Connecticut too.
Yeah, so is Sasquatch. So
yeah.
But no, it's so true. You don't realize, but there is a big fear. Like people have a big fear of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an eerie feeling sometimes, and depending on how well you know the property or how many times you've taken that walk, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just don't let my mind get in the way, you know what I mean?
No, you just keep trucking, doing what you got to do. I mean,
I have this one spot that I grew up hunting my whole life, you know, piece of private, and like when you leave you've been there actually, where with dad, you know, and about halfway in there, you go through that stand of pine trees. You know, they're probably like 40, 50-foot pines, and the temperature always changes when you hit those pines.
Yes,
and like it gets darker, it's quieter, the temperature drops, and like I wouldn't say I'm scared, but every time you walk through those pines, you're like, oh, this is a little eerie. Like you go from hardwoods to pines. And as soon as you get back out to the hardwoods on the other side, you're like, all right, I'm okay again.
So I think honestly, like a property like that, right? Like that's a property that you go to all the time. It's the same as like the petting zoo for me with my dad. Like you know that property, you know where every rock placement is. The thing for me, like honestly, is a piece of public that I've never been to. And I like e-scouted it, but maybe walked in there. But then this is the first time that you're going to go in there in the dark. And you're like, I don't know. Like, so I had an instance this past season, like, me and you, we scouted that spot where I've been hunting pretty heavily. And I had never been in there, in the morning, like dark, like I scouted it, put a camera in there, things were good. And then the first time I go to walk in there, like, it's a little eerie, and then, the thing is too, and I had this happen to me, and this is kind of where this relates to, is that when I was walking in there, I see a flashing red light, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of nowhere, dude. Like, what is going on here? But you see it in the long distance. Well, what happened to me a couple of years ago, actually, the day that I shot my biggest buck, I was walking into a piece of public, and someone was flashing a red light at me, and I'm like, what the hell? So this happened, and I'm like, dude, there's nobody can come in from that way. That's like, there's no way that they can come in from there. And if they did, they're miles. And there's no way that they beat me in here. Like, I'm here dirt early. Like, there's no way. What ended up happening was the next mountain over had a beacon for like a tall tower, but I thought it was the red beacon light, and it's my first time going in there, so I'm like nervous, right? But I'm watching the light, and it was blinking like an SOS tile, so it was like a little bit odd. But then after watching it for like a minute or two, I realized that it was doing the same frequency for a long time. You know what I'm saying? But it looks a lot closer than it actually is. And the first time that you go in there, and you're a little like on edge, right? Because you're like, I don't know. But it's definitely an eerie feeling when you go into a piece of public and not know where you're going.
Yeah. I don't typically do that too often, going in the dark to the unknown. If I'm going in the dark, I've probably been there before, or at least to scout and pick a tree or whatever. But a few times I've done it coming out in the dark, where I kind of just go in the daylight, like scout my way in, and then next, you get a little ahead of yourself, and you're a little deeper than you planned, and you just keep going, pushing in, finally find a spot and set up, get your sit in, then you tear down, you're like, oh shit, like I got a long walk out dark, and I wasn't paying attention on my way in because I was looking for sign.
So you're mapping your whole way out. But
yeah,
the thing that happens with me a ton, like especially with mobile hunting, like one of my favorite things to do is like, say a Friday afternoon, right? I'll go into a spot. I'll get out of work early, go into a spot, and I'll scout a spot in, like you're saying. But I'll leave my stuff there for the next morning. So like if I seen good signs, seen a good buck, say it's, near in rut, whatever, some scrape, some sign, I'll leave all my gear in the tree and then go back there. But it's a roulette, dude, because I've done this before in public in Ohio, where I've gone in to a spot I know, and then when you're sitting back at camp, dude, and you're sitting at camp and everything's setting in, and it's like, what if somebody beats me there? Now all my stuff is stuck in that tree. Dude, now I'm up Schitt's Creek, no paddle. Like, dude, where am I going to go? Like, my only set of sticks, my camera arm, my platform, like, everything is all in there. And it's just like, I'm going in there anyways. I don't care if somebody else is there. They're going to be setting up right next to me. Like, it is what it is. My gear is there. So it's one of those things. But I love doing it. It's fun. I think it's a great thing, great strategy, because now you're getting 2 hunts. You're not worrying about setting up. It is kind of fun. It is. It really is. It's different.
We've been doing it for too long, dude. You look at the calendar, you're like, oh shit, we look right around the corner.
It's not far from now. And you know what? The other thing, and we'll talk about this, and we talked about this a couple of podcasts ago, but the boys from Forever Wild, they invited me and Steve up to do a management deer hunt. So we'll be hunting way before we thought. We're going up to do a doe hunt with those guys in camp and film for Forever Wild. So we're super excited about that. I mean, I don't really care. Like, shooting does, I'm in, dude. Let's go. Like, especially with the rifle. I've killed very few deer with a gun. Very few.
I can't say this. I cannot say the same.
Well, less than I have with my bow. But like,
Yeah,
we
or
used to
shotgun.
we did shotgun,
Yeah.
a ton of shotgun.
Yeah.
I was always a shotgun hunter. I don't even think shotgun. I've killed a shotgun, a bunch with a shotgun because we used to do deer drives. Muzzleloader because I track in the winter, and I just love muzzleloader, late season muzzle hunting. But I don't think I honestly can say that I killed a deer with a rifle. I mean, I don't really think I ever have. Steve.
I've killed more deer with a rifle than probably all other weapon implements combined.
Which is cool. I'm excited to be up on their farm and go and do it and podcast with those guys and do, a ton of cool stuff. I mean, they're super fun dudes to hang out with and blessed with the opportunity to be able to go and do such a thing, And I was on the phone with Steve the other day, and he's telling me all the stories about all the bachelor bucks that come in, and it's a doe only tag. So he got a tag for me and one for you. So we each have our own tag, but it's antlerless only. And he's like, dude, the bachelor bucks that come out, he's like, it's crazy. So many big bachelor bucks.
Yeah.
Oh God. It'd just be cool to see it. Just to hang out. Deer camp, beginning of September, end of August, like, count me with a rifle. Count me in.
Beginning of August.
No. End of August, beginning of September.
Oh.
The first week of September. So it's right before our season starts.
First week of August.
No, so what ended up happening was so it was gonna be a little bit earlier, but what happened was Jurassic Classic in Ohio. So they're one of the featured TV shows that are going to be at Jurassic Classic. So with everything going on the farm, this, that, and the other thing. So he called me yesterday and said that it's going to be the first week in September. So it's a little bit before our season opens, but still, I don't know. He says that the meat tastes a lot better.
I'm with it.
Whatever.
Sweet.
Better than nothing. Punching holes in things.
That comes up in conversation all the time, and I usually keep my mouth shut. You hear people talk about like big bucks don't taste as good as little deer, and rutted bucks taste like shit, and this, that. I have never opened up my freezer, pulled out whatever, cooked it, and been like, that tasted like shit. I bet you that came from such and such deer. Like, I honestly can't tell the difference.
So I've definitely had scenarios where, I shot a couple of weeks ago, I think I posted up a picture of that big doe that I had shot and that had like no teeth in its head. I don't know if you remember that one. It was like super old deer, probably like 7 to 10 years old. I don't know. Super old. That meat was like ruby red, like maroon. And it was the most disgusting deer I've ever tasted in my entire life. Like, just gross. But I've shot other bucks and stuff, and they taste just as good, if not better, than some of the other does that I've shot.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's no denying, like, if you shoot a skippy, right, it's going to be tender. Yeah. It's going to be tender. Like, that's a no-brainer.
You're not comparing apples to apples at that point.
Now, all kidding aside, like, I'm not trying to sound like a smartass, but the last several years, handful of years, right, I've focused more on mature animals, right? Only the biggest does, only the more mature bucks. So realistically, like, I haven't really had anything but in my freezer for a handful of years. So maybe that's why I can't really tell the difference, because, you know what I mean? There's not really a mixture in my freezer.
No. And the other thing too, the difference where I found a ton of difference is like our deer here in the Midwest. There's definitely a significant difference. Like, definitely a significant difference, but that's just the food source of eating soybeans, corn, so on and so forth. Like, you cannot compare the two.
Like a mud duck.
It is like a mud duck. It's like eating a largemouth bass. I mean,
I was just talking about that yesterday. Like, throw the bass back, eat the perch.
Eat the perch. Hey, listen, dude. I think it's just so.
My grandpa used to get so mad at me, dude. Like, when I was a kid, ice fishing and stuff. Like senior high school, we would just slaughter fish, right, and come home and have a big fish fry, like every white perch, yellow perch, crappie, largemouth. And my grandpa was like, what the hell are you doing killing those largemouth? Like, eat them. He's like, you're gonna throw the bass back. I don't care about the other shit. Don't keep your I didn't know, dude. I'm 18 years old. A
largemouth, though, like in the ice, tastes way better than it does in the summer. Like, in the summer, it tastes like mud. I'll eat it through the ice, but not.
But you got to remember, my grandpa thought he was Bill Dance, what I mean? So he was like, he looked at largemouth as like a trophy fish. So you don't kill them. You throw them back and catch them another day.
That's all bass fishermen. All bass fishermen.
So mad that I killed largemouth to eat them.
I love it. Well, man, speaking of largemouth and killing them and catching fish, let's get on with Greg. Let's go through the sponsors, dude. And unless you gonna get like Killer's Corners or anything crazy, I know.
Just for Brower, man, just crushing the tuna this year. He's on fire.
I know, dude. All the big eyes in the canyons. Got me fired up. I'm going out tomorrow.
I know. I'm jealous. I've never been, to be honest with you. Oh.
I got tuna fishing is one of my favorite things to do. So Friday, so tomorrow or today, I'll be out tuna fishing, local tuna. Sunday, I think I'm gonna go tuna fishing again. And then I booked a trip, actually, a canyon trip out of New Jersey. So I'm actually kind of excited about that. But it's a 2-night overnight stay in the canyons of New Jersey. So tuna and tile fish. Something a little different, but like they have, because their continental shelf is actually closer. So you can get there a lot quicker. The fishing's a little bit different, a little bit better. But it's just, I don't know. Josh has been rolling out to the continental shelf and just smashing giant big eyes.
Yeah. And then you know more about it than I do. Just if anyone's interested in following along, there's that Tri-State Shootout is next week, I believe.
Yeah, so that's put on by JB Tackle, and they do. I think it's out of Block Island, actually. I'm pretty sure. So they like weigh in over there and everything like that. But it's an offshore. It's all kinds of Calcuttas and crazy stuff. But you can follow along online. It's actually pretty cool to do that.
I believe the weigh-ins are live on somewhere, Facebook or
social media. Yeah, they do them across the board. Yeah. Or you can also keep up on it. TRI state.catchstat.com. You can kind of cheer for our boy from the our outdoor drive boy, Josh Brower.
Yeah, we should sponsor.
We should
sponsor that.
We should get like team jerseys for them so that then when they're there, they wear.
Might get in that Calcutta, you know.
Yeah. I love it. Well, guys,
wear this T-shirt, split the profits with me.
Yeah, exactly. Or we pay for Calcutta, sponsored by the Outdoor Drive, right? That's a good way to do it. Guys,
I hope they do good.
For you guys that are going to be in Vernon, New York, this coming up weekend is Hunt Stock up there, New York style. We will see you guys the 9th, 10th, and 11th in Massachusetts at the Wildwood Farm. You guys come and join us. We actually got a ton of great stuff. All of our sponsors have chimed in, and they're going to kick over a bunch of giveaways. We actually, Latitude dropped in a Method 2 saddle. Huntworth dropped in on tops and bottoms on that. So actually outer shell. Last time we did like a Durham pants and shirt and a hat, but I think we're going to do an actual shell.
Nice.
So that will actually be kind of cool. So they'll do like the midweight stuff there. Bowtech, refuse to follow bowtech.com. And then Nor'easter, we're going to give away something. We haven't decided yet. I'm going to try and get something cool from him. And then Fourth Arrow Camera Arms. They kicked in some cool little stuff that's in the mail to us too. So exciting, some really good stuff. So stop by. We're not really sure how we're gonna do the giveaway yet, but we are. And I think that we're gonna do it for Hunt Stock only. I think this year. I think that's gonna be the plan. So you got to be at Hunt Stock to get in on it. I don't know how we're gonna do it. I don't know if you got to buy merch or what we're gonna end up doing yet, but we'll be able to give away a lot of real good stuff, man. I mean, if you
a waffle.
Yep. So go and check out those sponsors. In the meantime, if you guys need something, just let us know. We do have a couple of promo codes. You can always ask us about that. And other than that, man, unless you got something, dude, let's get Greg on. Outdoor Drive Podcast. All right, back at it with Greg Staggs. How are you, man?
Man, I'm good, buddy. How are you doing?
Good. You know what? I'm actually kind of excited because this is not a normal podcast for you, and you know I think everybody's gonna join in with us, and they're gonna think, oh, we're talking public land, big deer, saddle hunting, and that is not even close. I think there's a lot of hidden gems in this podcast. What do you say, Greg?
Dude, I'm really excited about it. I've actually been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks. And I mean, I'm going to kind of reveal something to you that I haven't said to anybody, and that is, I mean, like, okay, so I'm already planning. Like, I'm heading to Kalamazoo, Michigan, this coming next Thursday, right? And I've been invited to go up there to the Mobile Hunters Expo and be one of the guest speakers along with it. Just a killer's row of who's who in the mobile hunting world. I mean, Dan Infalls, Andy May. I mean, all these guys. I'm a part of that list, right? And I'm excited about that. But here's what I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks. I'm already looking ahead to the next 3, 4 years, 5 years, and really tapering down my mobile hunting. I've almost, and I don't know, it's weird, man. I won't say I've accomplished everything I want to accomplish in the mobile hunting world, but in a sense I have. I mean, I want about 2 more big giant bucks on my wall, and I will have accomplished the goals I set out for 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And after that, man, I really want to taper the mobile hunting stuff back. And I will still hunting, but I'm going to go on in some of the key times when it's the best return on investment. And so, you know, I'm famous for putting in 100 sits a year, right? And because I just love bow hunting. But I really see myself getting to the point where I start tapering those 100 sits down to maybe 60, 50, 40 key sits during November and stuff like that. And really, I'm going to transition that time that I gained back to chasing trophy catfish. And I'm already looking forward to it.
That's crazy. So what were some of those goals that you set out for 30 years ago that you have now accomplished? That's kind of important to me. Like, it's ticking in my mind. Like,
okay, so there's one that's the overarching goal. I mentioned it one time. Actually, Jake Bush and I were on a podcast talking, and I mentioned that's the only time I've ever mentioned it. This was something that when I'm like one of the OGs, and I'm not talking about the original gangster. I'm talking about old guys. Right? I'm an old guy, Dude, so I came up through bow hunting and mobile hunting. I started mobile hunting by necessity. I mean, we were broke, we were poor. You know, my family didn't have. I grew up in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that literally could fit in my living room now, and that's just where we came from. We didn't own land. We didn't know anybody who owned land. I mean, I literally could not comprehend land ownership and being able to buy farms and stuff like that. So I've been a public land hunter my whole life. And so that's where I came from. I got on the internet about the time that it was literally dial up, bells, clicks, and whistles. Literally, you dialed in and you listened to the thing connect, and it sounded like a freaking robot from an 80s movie, right? And at that time frame, there were a handful of us that were on these forums, and people like Dan Infalt and Todd Preenitz and people like that became very good friends of mine because we all came up together. And somebody at that time frame, I can't even remember who it was. Somebody said, "Man, wouldn't it be cool?" Because again, this is not hunting over bait and corn piles and manicured lands and food plots. We were all hunting public land, and we were all broke, and we were all chasing ghosts in the forest. And someone said, "Man, wouldn't it be super cool if you could kill 9 bucks, your best 9 bucks total, or your best 6 bucks, your best 6 bucks." Totaled 900 inches. So 900 inches in 6 bucks. It comes out to 150 inch average. And that stuck with me, man. I was like, man. And so right now I'm 8 inches off that with my best 6 bucks. So I'm looking for, and that includes a 142 inch 6-pointer. So, and I want to keep that 6-pointer in that 6 bucks. So yeah, I want to hit 100. I want to hit 900 inches with 6 bucks, including my 6-pointer as one of those 6 bucks. Wow, that's my big goal.
That's incredible.
They're all public land. They're all DIY. They're all over the counter. They're all archery. No guides. No nothing. So yeah, that's my big goal. I'm 8 inches away. I need a 145-inch buck to hit that number to put me over 900 inches, and I really want to blow by the 140 because I pass a lot of bucks that are 140ish, so I really want to blow by it and get it with a 150, 155 to really put me over the edge.
And to completely crush it to the point of no return.
Yeah. And so that's my overarching goal. And then just the way my man cave, my living room is shaped down here, I can put that buck on a wall. He will replace one of my smaller ones, and then I've got room for one more. And that's the reason I said I need 2 more bucks to do what I want to do. And then I will be surrounded with these mega giants. And, is it enough? It's never enough, but it will have done what I wanted to do. And over the last several years, I've just become really, really, really passionate about chasing these big, big, big catfish. And I really just, because we give up, we talked about it on other podcasts prior to this, we chase turkeys hard in the spring, dude. We go, we were fortunate enough, this was a bad year. We didn't even go to Kansas this year. My landowner buddies, we hunt public land. All our whitetails are public land. Most of our turkeys are private land. It's just something we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very fortunate enough to develop a great relationship with a private landowner out in Kansas who's always invited us to come out and hunt. We have a great experience out there. They're free range, but it's private land, obviously. And he called me this year and he goes, dude, don't even bother coming out. He goes, I've seen one turkey on my farms this year, all year long in Kansas. So this is the first year in 11 years that we haven't been to Kansas. And we were still fortunate enough. We still took 5 just here in Missouri and Illinois between my boys and me. So, if I just get to sit back and watch them shoot, turkey hunting, I don't need to be the trigger guy on that. And but the problem is, the reason I bring up turkey hunting is that overlaps prime catfishing time. I mean, that's when a lot of my buddies that are in the catfishing world are out there put some monsters in a boat, and we're still out there in the turkey woods. So we miss that. And about the time we come out of the turkey woods and go, okay, we're gonna take a breath, we're gonna stop right now, and we're gonna chase some catfish. Well, about that time, the catfish world, the catfish, out there on the river, they're going into spawn, and it's the absolute worst time to start fishing for catfish is when we start. And so there's a month or so that goes by where all the catfish are on their beds. They're not chasing baits. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there guarding. And a lot of times they're in holes. They're in logs. They're not where places you can get to them unless you're, Hannah Barron building a box trap or something going after them. Right. And so for us public water fishermen that are trying to locate, they're gone basically. The bite has shut down because of spawn. And then, they come off of spawn about July, 4th, 12th, somewhere mid-July. We get a month or two of good fishing, and that's when a lot of times you see me post all these pictures of these big catfish on my Facebook page. We get a month or two, and then bam, we're chasing whitetails. Right about the time it starts getting good, because these whitetails are almost like bucks in the rut. They're putting on weight for the winter, and they're starting to get hungry again, and they're becoming voracious feeders. And we put our poles up, put a boat up in a shop, and get into hunting. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of curtailing some of the hunting in the next 3 or 4 years, and really getting out on the river during prime time, which we really haven't got to take advantage of yet because we got so many other interests.
It's crazy. So let's wind it right back to the beginning. Where did this addiction, because it is an addiction for you, where did 100%. This start? If you're going to give up, I think, so Steve just joined in with us, and Steve, you missed out that Greg is going to hang up his bow for majority of the season just to chase these cats. Can you believe that, of all things? He's going to narrow it down to
I'm going to taper it down. I'm not saying give up. Those were but I am in the next 3 to 4 years, I'm looking at tapering off my I've always said, hey, I'm the guy that in the last 21 years, I haven't missed 100 sits in a season. That's going to come to an end. It literally is. It's going to go from 100 sits a season to 30 or 40, and they're going to be dedicated, precise, pinpoint hunts where I'm doing more of the Andy May stuff of doing a lot of more scouting and going in a kill mode where I'm just going after a big buck or something. And the rest of my time, I'm going to be on the boat, man. I'm going to be out there.
I could see it though, man. I mean, being a seasoned outdoorsman, like we like to call it, whatever's in season is what we like to do. you got to pick and choose your battles. Like it's hard to do it all. And I mean, not the same, but like I used to be big into stream fishing trouts and the opening day of trout season, That's what I do growing up. I never missed an opening day of trout season. And then somebody taught me something about killing turkeys.
Yeah,
I don't think I've been trout fishing since. It's like, dude, I can't give up a morning chasing turkeys to go catch a couple little brook trout. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly.
It's hard, man. Like when you get overlapping seasons and overlapping, the worst is when it's overlapping prime times, right? Prime time fishing with prime time fishing. It's like,
and I think our last podcast that we all did together, if I'm not mistaken, might have been about trapping. So we go from we go from chasing turkeys hard, and then we fill the summer with catfish, and then we transition right over into chasing whitetails, and then January 15th. And to be honest with you, we're giving up some of the best trapping season because we're still trying to put meat in the freezer, still going after big bucks. And I'm one of these. I hunt hard, but I haven't had a lot of early season success. So, a couple years ago, I killed a really nice buck the last hour of the last day of the season because we just hunt till the very, 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 very end. And so we give up some of the best trapping because we're still whitetail hunting. And then we start trapping when actually a lot of my friends are catching good catfish again.
Right.
And I'm like, we kind of miss some of the, other than whitetails, that is our priority right now. We never miss the best part of whitetail season, but we do miss the best part of a lot of other seasons, and specifically catfish, and that's going to change.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And Steve, you missed the point that he's about to average out and literally do 6 deer over 900 inches on average.
Whether you're just looking to stay warm during a hunt or need maximum concealment, the clothing you wear can make or break a hunt. At MidwayUSA.com, we understand hunting clothing has come a long way with more meticulously crafted camo patterns, advanced scent control technologies, and weatherproof options to withstand the elements. Hunters have to wait until their favorite season, but shouldn't wait on gear, which is why Midway USA offers super fast shipping. When you're ready for your next system, log on to MidwayUSA.com. The 1911 is one of the most iconic firearms in history. Designed by John Browning, the 1911 was the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. military from 1911 to 1985. While Colt produced the original, almost every major firearm company has produced its own version. It's wildly revered for its reliability, crisp trigger, and is still a favorite for all types of shooters. Whether you're looking to buy or build a 1911 and just about everything for guns, log on to MidwayUSA.com.
That's disgusting. So I need to know, where did it all start for you, Greg? Where was the hook, line, and sinker?
So my dad introduced me into the outdoors through fishing, and fishing was my first love. I fished hard until I was probably 17, 18 years old and graduated college. We grew up in this little part of Missouri called the Boot Hill that sticks down into Arkansas. And so, some of your listeners, especially if they're over more from the East Coast and stuff, are going to go, God, this guy's got this weird accent. I've actually lost about half of it. And that accent comes from being down in the if you cut Missouri off at the bottom, I would have been in Arkansas if they didn't have if Missouri hadn't grabbed that little spot there. And that spot didn't have any deer when I was growing up. All it had was a bunch of ditches. Some people may call them creeks. We call them ditches because they were all man-made. They took big excavators. The southeast Missouri and northeast Arkansas was a swamp. It was just covered with huge, acres and acres of swampland. And they dug out these drainage ditches to expedite the drainage so it could be turned into farmland. And it left these straight, huge channels that were, 5, 6, 7, 8 foot deep, something like that. And they just went for miles and miles and miles. And Dad took me on those and we fished them. And they had, if you caught a 3-pound largemouth, dude, that you almost thought about getting it mounted. That was a monster largemouth. And we had little bullheads and a lot of, goggle eye and rock bass and occasionally a crappie and a ton of bluegill and just different sunfish and things like that. But so it was never any big giant fish, but it was just for a boy growing up who, from the time he was 4 or 5 years old, fishing underneath behind a bobber with a, little container of red worms or tube of crickets or something like that, and then I got into saving my allowance and buying Rappalas and, balsa wood jigs and learning how to throw a bait caster. And eventually I got a fly rod and learned how to cast a fly rod with a little trim jim to catch topwater bluegill, stuff like just the whole gamut. But it was never huge fish. It was just a lot of fun with all those game fish that were smaller. And we did that within about a 20-mile distance of the Mississippi River. And I mentioned Trevor and I were talking before this started. We grew up really poor, and so Dad finally saved up and got a 14-foot John boat with a 9/8 Merc, and we thought we'd hit the lottery. I mean, that was big time to have that boat. And we took it to a few little sloughs, but there was no way we're taking that boat out of the Mississippi. Dad was scared to death of Mississippi. Everybody that grew up in this area, you get out on it, you're going to die. And you do have to be cautious. We'll talk about that later, probably, I'm sure. And with my boat I have now, and that's the river we fish and everything. But that was almost like Narnia in the movie or something like that. Like you looked out there to Mississippi and like, wow, just danger and mystery and mystique and all that goes with it. You hear these stories, these monster catfish that lay underneath the grain bins where they load the barges with corn and all this stuff. You hear these stories and myths and fables and the old popular, some diver went down by the dam and saw a catfish that scared him to death that could eat him or swallow him, and so we always had mystique, so yeah, it's crazy. But so I left that area. I went to college. I got into deer hunting basically to put food on the table when I was in college because we were so broke. Again, didn't plan on going to college. Nobody in my family ever went to college. I was literally got into deer hunting to feed myself because I needed help. I mean, I was taking out student loans, going into debt, getting, just broker. And my man, if I could kill a deer in college, man, put it in the freezer, I mean, God, what would that do to lessen the grocery bill? So, and then that got me started. That's why I got into deer hunting. And then it just consumed me for the next 25 years or so. And then, I don't know, sometime, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, we're finally, I'm not saying we've become rich or anything, but we got enough, financial security and ahead enough, or like we started looking at getting a boat, and we were looking at first like a kind of a ski boat or maybe even a deck boat or something that the family could enjoy. And the more we researched, the more we got to think about it. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool to have more of a dual purpose boat or some kind of a boat that I could get out in the Mississippi? Because I've always had it in the back of my mind way back from when I was a kid. And we researched it a lot. And I came across Sea Arc, and we ended up choosing a boat that's kind of a combination between a family boat. The front of it's got a couple couches. My wife loves to go out with us, and we're going to go to a lake tomorrow and just swim and tube on it, and it's got couches. But from the console's back is 100% pure tournament catfishing boat. It's got an 80-gallon live well set up for tournament catfishing, and so it's a best of both worlds.
It's just straight business from. It's like
business in the back.
It's like a mullet.
Yeah. And in fact, the very front of it gets back into business again because it's got a casting deck, so I can throw a casting net, catch shad, mullet, whatever. It's got drain holes on, so when you pull the cast net into the boat, you're bringing a lot of water in with you. It's got holes off the side of the water. The casting deck is sloped so that the water runs off. It's got a bait tank so I can dump the shad right into the bank up front. And then you take one step back, you got the 2 couches, and then you go another back, and then you're back into the catfish world. So it's a great 100% catch-all, do-it-all boat. I do love the boat. It's been really nice for our family.
So my question, so obviously, the whole cast netting bait thing is like, that's right up our alley here on the coast. Like that's a huge thing. We do a ton of it, bunker, whatever, shad, we do a ton of that. Like, so it's in the same realm where that bait holds up in a certain area and you're cast netting on them to get gizzard shad, or what is it?
Yeah, so gizzard, threadfin, mostly those two. We will get in the summertime, and so this brings up a couple different points we'll try to address here before I forget them. We've had a huge invasion of Asian carp, like a lot of the United States has, right? So you can find Asian carp schooling up in some of the shallower areas, like a little inlet or a bay or a cove or something like that. And I'll throw a cast net for Asian carp. Now, I don't like catching more than a couple of them because they just go so crazy once you get them that it's hard to get them out of the net, and you only need 1 or 2 to actually give you enough bait, because I will actually fillet them off, leave the scales on one side, and then cut them into strips that'll wave in the water. Mm-hmm. And 1 or 2 good Asian carp is plenty for the night. So I've messed up and had 7 at one, like huge Asians, like I'm talking almost 10-pound Asians. I've had like 7 in my net one time. I almost couldn't get it over the boat. And Yeah, it's a nightmare. So I try not to throw it into too many, but yeah, gizzards, threadfin, Asians. If I get in a school of white bass, if I'm in a state that allows that, Tennessee does. Um, so and then we catch a lot of our bait with sabiki rigs or like multiple crappie jigs. We go after one of my bait of choice is skipjack, and we use skipjack a lot.
Okay.
And so skipjack, shad, and Asian carp are my three primary baits that we go after and use to catch these big monster cats.
So it's a lot of cut bait then.
Mm-hmm. Cut, and I'm actually so 99% of what I do is cut bait. I do have a little creek nearby me that is just full of green sunfish. And green sunfish are awesome because they're a very hardy fish. They're very aggressive. We can take like a 32nd inch beetle spin like you buy at Walmart. Mm-hmm. And my boys and I will wade a creek lure. We'll put on swim trunks or just little shorts or something and tennis shoes or like aqua shoes like you buy at Academy Sports to go kayaking in or something. And we'll wade a creek for 3 or 4 hours and we'll fill up one of those little aerated buckets with 15 or 20 green sunfish that are 3 or 4 inches long. And we'll take those and we'll set up on a log pile, underwater log structure, wood structure, something like that, and set anchor down. We don't do a lot of anchor fishing, and I know we're going to get into that a lot. But we'll anchor down and throw out the live bait, and that's really the technique we'll employ for flatheads, which is not really our catfish of choice. That's not what we've become good at going after, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. And so live bait is our preferred. If you can keep shad alive, and I'm actually about to buy a bait tank for our boat so I can keep shad alive because it takes special requirements. You need a round tank,
aeration.
Red nose themselves. They'll run into, if it has a corner, they're going to kill themselves, red nosing themselves. And you need a round bait tank. It has to be extremely aerated, very well. It has to turn the water over a lot, and it has to have a great filtration system because they'll puke up and ammonia will get in it. So you got to have a good bait tank. But we're going to get one of those for our boat and get more into the flathead catfishing. But right now, our primary focus is big blues.
So let's just go right into it, honestly, because one of the things is normally you would think that you would be anchor fishing, right? Like that's a big thing they do here in the Connecticut River, which is like a Mississippi but smaller, right? And they do a ton of channel cats, big channel cats. We're known for the channel cats here. And a lot of it is getting onto that structure on the up current of the structure and anchoring up and then putting cut baits back into that structure. Right. So that's not a normal type of fishing for you?
Not for us, and we had to learn this. So I'll make a point about tournament catfishing here. We've got there are trails, and a trail is a series of tournaments that are usually ran by the same tournament director. Okay, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so we got a trail ran by a gentleman here out of South Central Illinois. His name is Alex Nagy, and he runs a tournament trail called Twisted Cat Outdoors. And they do a phenomenal job with the big tournaments. But one of the things that endears me to that tournament trail, besides it being local, obviously, but they offered a subset of the pros, if you will, and these guys are pros. They offered an entry level called a grassroots division, whereas a normal tournament is $300, $350, $250 on the lower end. Let's just say an average of $300 to get in, which is a lot when you don't know what the heck you're doing. You don't want to go waste $300, right? So Alex runs this thing called grassroots that allows anybody to enter the same tournament for $50 a boat. And you get to go, you have to weigh. Instead of keeping 3 fish, you keep 2 fish, and you have to weigh in an hour early, and you're only competing against the other grassroots participants. So, but it gets you out there on the water with everybody else, and you launch after the last pro boat leaves. You launch after that, and then you come in before them, but you're still kind of part of it, and you're there to see everything else. So that's how we got involved. We just kind of started. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. And there were 2 great things that came out of that. One is our first tournament, we went out in the middle of the Mississippi, fairly swift water, and anchored down because that's what we thought catfishing was. And we had our array of rod holders that looked like a spider rig for a crappie fisherman, right? We threw 6 different poles out different directions right in the middle of the river. And we watched like 15 boats come by us, and we're actually in a fairly good spot, we've learned, but everybody else would drift with the bow of their boat pointed upstream, and they were drifting backwards with the current, but sort of a little bit slower than the current. and they were fishing off the back of their boats, and then they would get to a spot and they would power back up and they would do it again. And every boat on the river was doing this. We were the only ones all day long that we saw anchored down, and we had no idea what everybody else was doing. We're like, what the heck are they doing? So we learned later on they were utilizing a technique that we do now, obviously. They were utilizing a technique called bumping. And we'll get into what bumping is. Basically where you put most of all these catfish boats are real expensive. They're very high end, and we all run remote control trolling motors off of it. So you can stand on the back of your boat, point your boat upstream. Let's say that Mississippi, on average, where we're at, probably 2.5, sometimes 3 miles an hour. Pretty good current for the water rolling through there. If it's a 3 mile an hour current, we will actually stand on the back of the boat, use our remote control to operate the trolling motor, and run it so that it cuts the boat speed half of the current speed. So if the river's coming 3 miles an hour, we'll cut it to where the trolling motor is keeping the boat running 1.5 miles an hour. So the boat's coming about half the speed of the current down through there. And then we can stand on the back of the boat, and this is what makes it really fun. A lot of people don't realize catfishing involves this. People think, catfish is boring. It's passive. You sit in a lawn chair, you drink a beer, you wait for a bite for 20 or 30 minutes, or you sit on a boat and you wait for a bite. We're actively fishing almost like a bass fisherman does. If you think about a plastic worm, you Texas rig a plastic worm, and you reel it in, you're feeling along every log, bump, hump, but you're reeling it toward you, right? We're doing the exact same thing, but in reverse. We're standing on the back of the boat, and we're actually free spooling and using our thumb to control the spool, and we're actually letting that bait go backwards. The current is pulling it out faster because the current's going faster than our boat, right? It's twice as fast as our boat. And we're barely lifting the bait up. We'll have a dropper with a cannonball sinker and then a leader going out to a cut bait or something like that. And we're actually feeding that bait out at a distance. We'll start at the boat, and by the time we end up getting toward the end of our spool, we may be 500 feet out past the boat by the time we pick it up, reel it up, and start over again. And so it's really cool. And the cool thing about this, when you get a 50, 60, 70 pounder that hits and swallows that chunk of skipjack or shad or whatever it is you're utilizing, and you're sitting there thumbing it and holding it in your hand, and all of a sudden he just takes it, and you get that raw power of a 60 pounder just engulfing that, swimming off with it. Literally, it will almost bring you to your knees sometimes. And you're holding it when it happens. So you're not just watching it and pick it up. You're holding it in your hand when it happens. Dude, it's the most awesome rush feeling. It's incredible. So that's the number one thing, is we learned how to bump that day or that first series of tournaments that we went to. And then secondly, and just as importantly of why it's important to get involved in the tournament scene, and I'm not trying to get people to go spend money and throw money away, but pick whatever level tournament you want to. But we fish a lot of these tournaments and we're like, we didn't catch anything for, a long time. We weren't catching anything. And the first time or two we went out, we're like, well, they're just not biting today. Today's a bad day. Today sucked, right? It's a full moon. What excuse you want to make up? Today just sucked. They weren't biting today. And then you go to weigh-in. Oh, dude. It's like the top 5, 6, 7 teams always weigh in over 100 pounds with 3 fish.
Right.
Usually they're 120 to 140 with 3 fish, the top 5 places. I'm like, no, today didn't suck. We sucked.
Right. Right.
So you get to realize that, like, okay, they're fighting somewhere. The fish are eating somewhere. You just got to figure out the pattern. You got to figure out what's going on, because they're eating somewhere. Somebody's going to figure it out.
And so I want to back up just a little bit, because I want to digest this whole bumping thing to kind of like hit it home, right? Yeah. So one of the things is that we would call that power drifting, right? Where when you're now drifting, we do the same thing, going over a structure, kind of just bouncing it up a structure, right? But we're going from, say, 120 feet to 20 feet, right? But with that and understanding, I just want to kind of hit it home is... Yeah,
there's a lot to dive into with a bumping technique. We could spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, so my kind of, as I'm taking this all in and understanding it, when you're bumping and you're half the speed of the current, you're keeping that bait in the strike zone at all times. So now it's bouncing through. If you're anchoring, now that bait has a tendency to swing high. When you're bumping, then it's keeping it down and it's moving its way through the structures.
Yeah, I
So the
would say.
presentation's
It may
different.
swing, if you're thinking about the current swinging it or something. More or less, we try to hook. Like I hook right through the lips, go to the bottom of the lip, come out the top of the lip. So
Mhm.
your bait's pretty much in line. And I've watched it. And Mississippi, it's called the Muddy Mississippi or the Big Muddy for a reason, right? You can only see about 8 inches down, but you can hold your bait 8 inches so that you can still see visibility on the water. It's pretty much in line. It's not
Right.
it's not fluttering like crazy. So it's pretty much going to do. It's going to be there. The advantage with bumping is I can work. So we're looking for current seam structure, rock transitions, mud line to sand, things like that. Sometimes it's even just big humps in the water that a fish may roll up and get behind and get out of wait for bait to come by. So instead of just sitting there passively hoping the fish swims by, we're taking the bait to the fish.
Right.
So I can get on a seam line or a transition line and run a quarter of a mile down it and see if there's fish all the way down that seam line. And eventually you're going to run into one. So that's the big advantage to me over anchor fishing.
So one of those things being that a catfish is in the predator fish, statute. So
apex predator, a
100%.
blue cat, 60, 70, 80 plus. I mean, you're talking, there's blue cats out there that are 120. I mean, I've got a guy that I follow that I communicate sometimes on Facebook with. He's he's broken the Tennessee state record. His name's Micah Burkhart. 120, 124, both of his catfish. So you're talking the apex predator in the Mississippi. I mean, there's nothing else.
Super lazy. So like in the fact of that they're not moving in the current searching for bait. They're waiting. They're an ambush fish where they're sitting behind a structure in the lows of the currents where those break lines are. They're sitting behind it waiting for that bait to come over. So I could see where the bumping could be way better than anchoring when it comes to those fish because they're just laying low.
Ground.
Yeah.
That's the fact of, and this is something else I've learned since we got. If you are anchor fishing, I've got some friends that are great anchor fishermen. I learn from them that when you do set up on structure, let's say you identify a fault, because the graphics that we use, the fish finders now, the Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin's, they're so amazing. I mean, when you spot a fallen tree, I mean, it looks like a tree laying in your yard.
Right.
And so if you go up and set up 150 feet above it, cast 120 feet to it, I mean, in the past, I would have sat there for hours. And what I've learned from my fellow pros, and don't take that wrong, I'm not classifying myself as a pro. What I'm learned from the pros is sit there for 30 minutes. And if what I've figured out and learned from watching all these guys and being on their boats, I've begged and borrowed to get on some of these guys' boats. And the catfish community is just so awesome. I mean, I've had so many people open their arms to my son, Gabe, and me, who has embarked upon this adventure with me. And they've opened up their boats and said, come on, take you fishing. I mean, Chris Souders is a nationally renowned, world famous catfisherman who lives in Ohio. And he said, come on over. And it was like a 12-hour drive. We drove over and stayed at a hotel, and he met us at the ramp at 6 a.m. and we fished until like 3 a.m. the next morning, dude. And it's like, we learned so much. But that trip, we learned, set up for 30 minutes. If they don't bite, they're not biting. Go somewhere else. There's not a fish there, or they're not hungry, whatever.
So Chris is an anchor fisherman over a bumper? That was one of my questions. So in Ohio, when Chris is fishing, is he bumping also, or is he an anchor fisherman?
He mostly anchors because Chris is a flathead specialist. He knows flatheads in and out, and so most people anchor fish because flatheads bite very passively. A flathead bite is 180 degrees different than a blue.
Okay.
When we're blue fishing or blue bites, they slam it a lot of times, and literally we call them thumb burners. I mean, if you're sitting there, they will burn the fingerprint off your thumb when they hit and strip drag it if it's a big one, right? The same size flathead will come up and barely mouth the bait while you've got it anchored, and literally you have to watch your pole just ease down, and eventually, most of us fish with circle hooks. Eventually, you walk over and you engage the reel and reel down on him and turn that circle hook in the corner of his mouth, and so it's a completely different style of fishing. So Chris is mostly anchored. He has gotten to where he pulls planer boards a lot, where you're going 0.8, 0.6 miles to the miles an hour, and you're spreading them out almost like a walleye fisherman or a striper fisherman will, where you actually use planer boards to get baits out, and you're having multiple late baits out in the water. But Chris does know how to bump. I mean, if you look at his YouTube channel, I mean, he knows how to bump too. Don't think that that he doesn't.
I wanna kind of go into the rig aspect though, because like, so you're saying cannonball on the bottom, like are you 3-weighing or how is this?
Yeah,
because
we do. So I run we run 65 pound braid, 65 pound test braid. And the reason we choose, so it's funny, you talk about the difference between anchor and bumping. We use mono. I use 40 pound mono for anchoring, and we use 65 pound braid for bumping. And the difference is, and Chris actually explained the mono thing to us. He's like, "Are you a perfect human being?" I'm like, "Not even close." He goes, "Are you a perfect fisherman?" No. And he goes, "It's so easy to make a mistake with a big fish at the boat when you're or at any time when you're anchor fishing. That mono will stretch. It's got a lot more forgiveness in it. It's also you don't need that. You need the stretch and the forgiveness more so than you need the instant feedback. The braid, on the other hand, gives me instantaneous feedback. I can feel even if I'm 200 foot out, 300, 400 foot out, and I come up over a big log rolling down the river. Sorry, I got a little feedback there. If I'm rolling down the river and I'm 300 foot out going a mile and a half down, and I come over a log, I can feel it instantaneously. I know to lift that bait up, lift that cannonball, get it up over that log, so maybe it gets a chance to get down behind whatever's behind her and put the bait in front of it, present it the right way. So the braid is really, really super important to us versus the mono. Anyway, I went off a little tangent. What did you?
No. We were just
there?
talking about rigs and stuff like that, but I think it was a great tangent, to be honest with you, because so the braid to mono, is the braid?
Oh, 3-way. Yeah.
Okay.
So we use braid to a 3-way swivel. And then I use a dropper. I put about a 20 pound test dropper to a cannonball. And my droppers start off in the neighborhood of about 18 inches long. As you become really ingrained into the catfish community, and especially tournament catfishing, you'll find that some days you need to shorten that dropper cannonball, or maybe you need to lengthen it. So sometimes when you're tournament catfishing, you and a partner on the back of the boat will run different length droppers to your cannonball, or maybe even a leader to between your 3-way and your circle hook that has your bait on it. Little changes like that can make all the difference in who wins the tournament or not. But yeah, it's a 3-way. We have a 20 pounder because sometimes you're going to lose tackle. You're going to even though it's a cannonball, you're picking it up and everything, you're going to get it hung up. So I prefer that my rig to break on that dropper and just lose my cannonball and keep the rest of my rig, because it usually has multiple swivels. It has a chain swivel in there. Sometimes we'll run a Demon Dragon or a knockoff Demon Dragon. I started buying off Amazon and painting and fixing them up myself. But you could have potentially $4, $5, $6 in each leader rig, and I don't want to lose. I mean, it's not like that's not going to make or break me. But man, there's days we've lost 15 or 20 rigs in a day fishing. I'd rather you lose just that cannonball weight and be able to retie on.
Well, not even. I mean, think about this, right? So even if you have a big fish on, now fishing structures with that cannonball, like if that big fish gets into a log jam, you're kind of, if you snap off the weight, you still have a direct line to the fish and not have to lose. I mean, I'll rather lose a weight than a couple $1,000 fish, like. Yeah.
Fortunately, it's funny. Usually by the time when we hook up, we've never had one in the Mississippi. We've never had one get into structure again. Usually they immediately go into the big current. They get off the bottom and they're using current to try to flatheads are a little different. They will dive down and try to get into structure and log jams and stuff like that. But we typically never, once we hook up and connect, usually they're in the current and they're free. But we have lost a couple $1,000 fish. That's a painful memory.
I think it probably is. I could only imagine. I mean, what's when you're bumping like that, what size wader are you using?
So that's a great question. So I bought obviously once you get into this world, this environment, you have to cast your own weights. And you probably, as a charter fisherman yourself, you're probably very similar. I've got friends that are plumbers, and they'll bring me lead pipes. I mean, any source of lead that I can get my hands on, I'm all about it. And we have a variety of lead cast whatever the forms that, and so I've got anywhere from, we've got 18-ounce cannonballs all the way down to 1 ounce, I think is our smallest one.
Wow.
And we typically will go out and start off with a 3 ounces. Typically, if the current's not just ripping through here, 3 ounces is a good start to start with. But we'll sometimes fluctuate and have to adapt if we're in big current with huge big swells and eddies and underwater dikes and stuff like that. We may have to bump it up to a 10 or a 12 just to keep it down on the bottom and keep it, in a good presentation phase. And there's sometimes if we're off to the side or something like that, we can get by with a 1 or a 2. The smallest I can get by and keep it down and keep just where it won't rip out of my hands, as far as not just the bait just going down so fast that I can't really feel like it's in a natural presentation mode. The smaller the weight I can get by with, the better for me, because I can feel the bites better. I can feel everything.
So, go ahead, Steve.
Well,
because I was going to ask you, I was going to say, Steve, not being a huge fisherman, I want to hear some question on your end.
Yeah. So I've got not like Trev, but like I've got some experience drifting in the saltwater and stuff like that, right? So like in my experience, it's always straight down. Right. Yep. And same thing, your weight depends on the current. So whatever you want to use, the smallest amount of weight you can use and still hold bottom. And as you drift, whether you're drifting like into that structure and you're going from like deeper water to shallower water, as you're feeling that bottom, you might have to give it a couple cranks as you're coming up, or maybe you can't find bottom and you got to let a little bit more out. But it sounds like as you're going, you're actually letting more and more and more. So we're always fishing straight down. But it sounds like as you drift, your bait's getting farther and farther and farther away from the boat. So, like, what's the reason for that? Is it just because the current is faster than the boat? And, like, so like, why aren't you just fishing below you the whole drift?
So, yes. So yes, you're 100% right. The bait is getting farther and farther and farther away from me. And the reason is that allows me to cover more and more water faster and faster. And it's also presenting that bait in its natural state, because that fish is lying there under, maybe it's next to a huge boulder or a rock or something like that. It's waiting for bait to come at it. So it's used to bait coming at it at the speed of the current, because that's what happens all day. That's the natural state. And so we're putting that bait in its natural state along the way. And that's pretty much it.
So with that being said, I'm just being an idiot because I have no idea.
I'm glad you are.
So if that's the case, why wouldn't you just drift at the 3 miles an hour with the natural current of the river and just send it? Like, what's the whole reason behind holding at half speed of the drift, and where does all that come from?
Because I'm still way more in control of the circumstances. That's a great question, but in my mind, and maybe this isn't the absolute 100% correct answer, but in my mind, it gives me way more control over the environment and the circumstances. Because there are times that I will hold my thumb firm on that spool and just work it slowly through an area. There are other times I will lift up and release the spool and let the current take it. And you kind of got to get a feel for what works well for you, what works well that day, what's working well during that period of structure you're going through. So it gives me a lot more control over the circumstances of that event.
So think of this, right?
One more thing, Trev, because I'm going to go kick the question to you, Trev. So in my limited experience drifting, I've done what I just said. We just drift with the natural current. When you get to the end of the drift, you power back up, you drop bait again, you go with the natural current. But Trev, I know you've talked about things, and I don't know anything about this, like spot lock and stuff like this. So in the salt where you are, Trev, do you ever hold current and go do a slower drift, or are you always going with the natural drift?
So for us is the same way as Greg. So we fish different types of fishing for different applications for different types of fishing, right? So there is sometimes us in the river, like, it can be totally 1-in-1, Mississippi, Connecticut River, same thing, high currents, muddy water, so on and so forth. So when you start to take and you are either, so spot locking is more like on a structure, okay? So like anchoring, right? you're anchoring on
weight down,
and you're holding that one spot. Where we do the same thing, bumping. But we don't call it bumping. We just call it live lining. But it's the same, virtually the same exact thing that's Greg's doing. And what you're doing is you're holding that boat to a slower speed so it looks more natural in presentation across the bottom. So what happens is that fish, so if I'm using a live bunker, which is a Manhattan, which is like a gizzard shad, almost the same thing, just two different places. So we live line them, and that fish naturally is swimming, but you're holding that presentation of that fish as it goes across that bottom, and those fish see it like that, right? And so you're holding, when you cut half a speed, that fish sets absolutely perpendicular with the boat, and it holds right there. They do the same thing in tarpon fishing. And what they do is, if you go any faster, any slower, that presentation doesn't hold true, and those fish literally will not take it because it doesn't look natural to them. It's too fast, too slow. It's the same thing, or seems to be, of what Greg's doing with bumping. So it's different applications for different things, and you just have to see what that fish wants. It might want a 4 ounce at 3/4 of the speed of the current. It might be 1/8 of the speed. It's really, you just have to feel out what's going on with the fish at that time.
And I thought of another reason too, and this is a pretty big one too, is if you're drifting straight down at let's say you did go back up to 3 miles an hour and you're pretty much straight down. When you hit structure, you hit a log, you come into a tree, there's about a 99% chance you're getting hung up.
Mm-hmm.
When I've got the boat at half speed, I'm feeding that line out with my thumb, letting it go, and the second I hit something, I can lift it up. I can't tell you how many times that, like let's say Gabe and I fish a lot together, my youngest son. So once we get a fish on, the other person will automatically reel in, okay, and reel in, put it up, and get ready to net the fish. And the reason we hurry up and reel in, obviously one is you don't want the fish to be able to tangle up in the other line. That's part of it. But really more importantly, the reason the other person reels in is because if we don't reel in, that line will be hung up by the time we get that fish netted and get back into the flow of things. Because if you're just going down, you're going to get hung up. The half speed thing lets me control. We rarely, I won't say rarely, we probably get hung up 400% less than we did when we got started. We still get hung up a lot because there's so much structure down there. And you're putting a big hook and a big ball of weight, you're going to break off. It happens. But we get hung up so much less than we did starting up because we've learned how to feel the bottom and pick up and all that stuff. So that's probably the biggest answer to tell you the truth.
So one of the things that we do, so with this, and I'm hoping that maybe, this can be related to a lot of different fishing, not only catfishing. I mean, no, we're talking catfishing, right? But like we do a 3-way drifting, and we do it up structure. So we'll start in, say, 100 feet of water and end in 70 feet of water. So what we do is you take the rod and you hit it to the bottom. You take 3 cranks off the bottom, right? And this is where the direct goes. So you're straight up and down. You want to be completely straight up and down. When you feel a bump, you set the hook as high as you can. Now taking the bait off, 3 more cranks. Now you're bringing it up, and you're just working your way up that shelf, and you're moving at 3 knots, which is like 7 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit crazier, and but it's the same exact thing. It's just a presentation to what it is, the most natural presentation. And the bumping, I mean, when this all happened and you've seen this, like, what was kind of like the thought through your head? You're just like...
Dude, so day one, we were flabbergasted. And I use that word purposely because it's like if there's an adjective that describes the way we were that day, or like we had no idea what people were doing. No idea. And so... Again, I talk about how great the catfish community is in the Midwest. So we come back and we're seeing these giant 60s and 70s getting weighed in. And dude, I was like, I was so, can't imagine how annoying I was my first 4 or 5 tournaments. And I'm still, I've befriended some of these guys. I'm very privileged now to call some of these guys that are literally world-class fishermen friend. But early on, I'm like, I'd probably just, I would have got annoyed with me. I mean, I asked him, like, what the heck are you guys doing at what? And everything that Steve was asking, and I'm like, I kept people for an hour after weigh-in sometimes just peppering them with questions. And the next tournament, they're like, I'm sure they're like, oh my God, is that dude coming again? You know, I'm like, I asked so many questions. And so, yeah. So hopefully, if anybody's interested in bumping or catfishing world, I hope this podcast helps so much, because maybe it'll save some of the fishermen in your area for the agony that I put people through. Because, man, I asked so many questions.
But
the best questions have the same follow-up question. Why? Why do you do that? But why do you do that? Well, why do you use that? But why do you do that?
And I'll tell you something that kind of stuck with me. I've never forgot this. There's a guy from Arkansas. I'm pretty sure he's from Arkansas. Comes up and fishes our tournament stuff. His name is Brad Stout. And he was going through some of the technique and stuff with me. And he's a phenomenal fisherman. But he said one thing that was different. A lot of people, I was wanting technique. Why, right? Say, why this, all this. And he said something as an aside that he goes, I love bumping versus anchoring, because anytime you tie yourself to the bottom of the river, you're in danger. I've never forgot that, ever. So you can go out there on this dangerous, very, very dangerous Mississippi River, and we anchor on it a lot. We do. And we try to be as safe as possible. And there are stories of people that have sunk their boats because they did it wrong and all this stuff. It can be very, and I love the fact that I've never forgot that, with him saying that anytime you tie yourself to the bottom of a river, you're putting yourself in danger. And bumping omits that. So I love that fact.
So is it a lot of daytime fishing for catfish or night fishing? Because there's this mythical thing that catfishing is a nighttime thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that you're exactly right. So all tournaments start off usually at about 7. Usually lines in the water at 7 a.m. and weigh-in lines out of the water by 3:30. Weigh-ins at 4:30 or something like that. So it's right in the middle of the day. And you're talking all these anglers. I mean, the best anglers are bringing in, like we said, 120, 130, 140 pounds of fish with 3 fish. And so that's a pretty good indicator right there that, and all these tournaments are always, there are very few night tournaments. Now, I've got some buddies who go out at nighttime, and they're usually your flathead fishermen that are going out there and anchoring over structure and stuff. But for a couple reasons, that it's easier to target structure at nighttime and anchor down on it. I don't want to be out there doing a lot. We bumped at night, and we caught fish bumping at night. But typically, especially on Mississippi, you've got, it depends on how calm the water is. If it's on the rise, if it's on the fall, if it's on the rise, you've got to deal with a lot of debris and log jams and stuff. We spent a lot of hours on the Mississippi after dark. Honestly, I prefer not to. It can get a little day, and there's a lot of barge traffic up and down. And barges, you would be shocked at how hard it is to spot a barge after dark. You're talking about something that is, I don't know, probably weighs the same amount as a freight train, and it sounds like it, but the sound has not made it to you yet. And they've got 2 little lights that all they're operating, because they've all got radar and all this stuff. They've got a little bitty green light that's probably about the size of this bottle cap, and a little bitty red light on opposite corners, and that's all you see coming down the middle of the river at night. Yeah, it can get a little dangerous at nighttime. So, but yeah, catfish will eat all day long.
I guess that's a mythical thing about all fishing. Like, everybody always says the best fishing is at night, and it's not true. Like, for us, it's a tide related thing where different tides, different times, different structures hold up, so on and so forth. Now, how does that translate into a river like that? Like, you're just looking at certain down current sides of structures?
Yeah, so obviously we're far enough inland here in the Midwest, in the middle of the United States, tides and everything absolutely don't come into play. There is some theory on full moon, new moon.
That was my next question.
It's funny. These tournaments, we've got a stretch of tournaments coming up starting middle of September. We've got 6 weekends in a row that we've allocated toward. Literally, there's 6 different tournaments. We're going bam, 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 bam. And on those 6 weekends in a row, I guarantee you the moon phase will be different from the beginning to the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, obviously by default, right? The moon's going to change during those 6 weeks. And in each of those 6 weekends, I guarantee you over 120 pounds of catfish will win the tournament with 3 fish only. So you can put stock in a new moon, no moon. I mean, I've watched some catfish YouTubers that, refuse to go out on a full moon or whatever. It's like they're still biting somewhere. You just got to put the pattern together because somebody's going to bring in over 100 pounds of catfish with 3 fish.
So we see the same thing in salt, right? Where I'm a huge believer, new moon, full moon, right? But the day of the new moon or day of the full moon, a little bit slower fishing. Can you still catch them? Absolutely 110%. 3 to 5 days before, 3 to 5 days after. And it's different for us in my beliefs, right? Because the centrifugal pull of the... We're getting crazy. You're going to think I'm smart, but I'm not. The centrifugal pull of the tides, so faster moving tides. So now baits are moving faster, so on and so forth. With that, it turns into a question, and my question to you is, when you're bumping, and does it matter for you, like higher river? Like, so when you have a faster river, so if the river's more fast on certain days, is the fishing better than the days that it's slow?
No, so that's a great question.
Boat Trader is America's largest boating marketplace with over 100,000 boats to choose from. We offer simple, comprehensive solutions for those looking to sell, find, and finance new or used boats. Visit BoatTrader.com to get started.
If you hunt enough, you learn the truth. What you seek speaks a language and knows it well. That's why every Primo's call for everything you hunt is made the right way. We sweat every detail so you get more out of every hunt, and nothing leaves our hand until we know it'll work in yours. Because we don't just make the world's best calls, we speak the language. Primos.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
I don't like a super fast river. Like this whole summer, we haven't done near as much fishing as we typically do because the Mississippi right now has almost been flooded out of its banks almost since turkey season. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of water that we have coming down the Mississippi right now. We've been on it a few times, and we haven't done very well at all this year. Just because the river is literally 10 foot higher than it normally is.
Right.
And when you're talking a river that's 20, 25 foot on average, another 10 foot, it's 30% higher than it normally is, and on average. So we don't like a lot of fast current in general.
Right.
In general. Now, what I will try to do, what we're looking for when we're fishing a lot of these tournaments is we're looking for the right speed of current, and that may be a little faster than the normal river or a little slower. We prefer if we could find a current seam or structure where the water is going and then the current in that particular area slows down a little bit. It's hard to find. You got to really, sometimes it's subtle changes. So we'll focus more on the current seams and then the structure and the transition on the bottom. It's almost like, you've heard me talk a million times on, I'm an edge hunter, an edge within an edge when it comes to deer hunting. And we almost take that same philosophy and apply it to catfishing. We're looking for edges under the water.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, and this goes into like electronics, right? And we were talking Hummingbird and all this other stuff. Are you running like a side imaging to kind of see those structures to understand where they are to find that edge within the edge?
Yeah. So we run. Obviously we have a quad chart up on one. Actually, last year, so we started off with a Hummingbird Solix. That's a 12. Humminbird Solix, and we ran that in a quad. We got our map, we got 2D, we got down scan, and we got side imaging. And then this last year, I added a 12-inch Lowrance to it too. Supposedly, theoretically, Lowrance has better 2D, Humminbird has better side imaging, so I can kind of split it all up. But yeah, we run 2D a lot, and then we run side imaging to see what we're missing, because 2D and down imaging is just giving you what's underneath the boat. And with both of these graphs, but especially for Humminbird, I mean, you can reach out 100, 150 foot. It's amazing. You're like, oh, there's a tree 85 foot over there to the left, and so our next pass when we're scanning, especially if we're doing a lot of pre-fishing or if we're just out fun fishing, the next pass we may move over that 85 foot, and so we could go right over that tree and hit it with down scan and get a better look at it.
Are you using the side imaging to find bait also?
Yeah, we do. But more so, a lot of our bait, we'll go up into shallow coves and stuff, and you can pretty much see them breaking off to the left or right. And so I use my electronics, and so that's pretty much when we're going after shad. So I use my electronics less so. I'm more visually looking for stuff, in a cove, or because a lot of times if I want shad, I'll go to one of the area lakes and run up in a cove and throw a cast net 4, 5, 6 times in a cove. And then the bulk of our bait is coming from, we'll do skipjack fishing. That's my preferred. That's my 99% of the time I'm using for bait is skipjack. And I don't. Most of the time we're not even in a boat when we're skipjack fishing. We'll go to an area dam or something and get in the headwaters of a dam and rig up a sabiki rig where I hand tie on 3 or 4 different colored crappie jigs and catch them 3 or 4 at a time. And usually we're just standing on the side of the river then.
So why skipjack though? Why will you keep going back to that bait?
Yeah. So skipjack is a very it's in the catfish world we call it catfish candy. Okay. Literally, that's the name. That's the bait. That's what we call it. Big catfish love skipjack. It's a very oily, bloody fish, and so it's very hardy as far as staying on your hook too. So it's a great combination: oily, bloody, and stays on your hook really well. And then the fourth most important thing is catfish love it.
Right.
So yeah, I'll go over in the spring and we'll put 200 or 300 skipjack in the freezer in one night. And I'll vacuum seal them and put them in the freezer, and then we'll fish with them for the next 2 or 3 months. And then maybe by the end of the year, I need to go get some more. But yeah, I'll load up on them in the spring.
So you had talked about pre-fishing. So are these normally that trail? Is it in different sections of the Mississippi, or is it normally in the same?
Nope. So the trail basically means by default that it will hit about 6 or 7 different locations in a calendar year or that summer. So our trail will start up in like, northern Missouri, and I typically don't even, because you can amass points, there's a tournament, there's a point standing throughout the year on these trails. There's a season-ending championship that's literally like a $50,000 total prize championship. First place being, maybe 15,000, second place being 10, and it works its way on down from there. It's for a total package of, 30,000 or so, something like that. And you qualify for that season-ending championship, and a lot of these trails are this way. You qualify for that by amassing points. We've never really cared about that as much, because to do that, you got to go sometimes these tournament trail spots, locations, cities that are mainly just channel cat places. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't care less about going to catching channel cat, to be honest with you. Now, the guys will do it because they're after the points to qualify for the season-ending championship. If I don't have a chance of catching a 60, 70-pounder, that's what thrills me. That's the reason I'm willing to give up spending time in a tree and seeing a 160, Purple Young class buck walking or anything. I'm not giving that up for a 4-pound channel cat.
I don't blame you, but it's another addiction at this point, right? Like it's that chase, that thrill, that I mean, like when you
that thrill comes from that brute power, dude. I wish people, and I hope people listen to this at some point, get a 50, 60, 70-pound catfish in their hand in 3-mile-an-hour current. Dude, it's just, they know how to use that current. So you've got that incredible raw power of a catfish is just nothing but pure muscle. and then you put the current on it, and they know how to use it. I mean, it's the closest thing to saltwater fishing we have in the United States. It's just raw, unadulterated power. It'd be like catching a tuna or something, It's just raw power.
I think, what's funny is that, all fish in their own nature, right? They have this like crazy will to live, right? And you have to remember, like with a blue cat or a flathead or whatever, I mean, they're enduring this current that is like unbearable to a Newman. Like if you were to take a person and throw it into that river, like we talked about how dangerous it is, you didn't go on it for the longest time. There's a reason for it. Now them fish live in that day in and day out. They're swimming up and down it, so that strength is a whole different strength. And when you turn it over into a fishing rod, gee, I can't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Catfish, when you grab a catfish, like any other fish, like a bass or something, it just feels like skin and meat. A catfish feels like a little muscle. You know what I mean? Like it's got that thin skin, and it just feels like they just look buff.
They are, and then you take that, and most people are used to a 2, 3, 4 pound catfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
You turn that into 60 pounds, 70 pounds, and it's hard to, you throw one. I know I sent you a couple pictures of before this that you could make a thumbnail or something with, man. There's one that I've got on my shoulder, not even the one you used on my thumbnail. There's one that from a tournament last year. I was fortunate enough that I won big fish in the Cabela's King Cat tournament that came through here. And that's a 64 pounder, which is, my personal best. I actually happened to get lucky enough to catch it during the tournament. And dude, it's all you can do to hold him up. I mean, they're just so massive and so. It's just crazy.
It's crazy. Like, I've been blessed to be able to catch some of the most, insane fish in this on this land. And I'll tell you this is God made these creatures a certain way for a certain reason. Like if you take and you dive into and just, I know it's kind of crazy and people are going, you're a little weird, but when you catch one of these things and you sit down next to it and you like look at it, like say like a tuna, its fins snap in and it has these rudder tails and like they're made as a missile. And it's the same with a catfish. It's slick, sleek, tight in the front. You know what I'm saying? Like it's giant mouth to feed and eat. Yeah. I mean, come on. They're just like the most, it's insane why they were made to do what they do to survive in the water. Like it's incredible to me. It really honestly is. And it's, that power, like, I mean, like, come on, man. Let's be honest here, Greg. You're about to captivate a goal that is almost unreachable by most people, right? To be able to shoot this many amount of deer. But there has to be some type of goal for you when it comes to catfishing that you're trying to chase. I know you, and I know that this isn't, you're not just doing it because you want to or you love it. There's a goal.
Right now, it's just to keep bettering the personal best, the PB, right? So I mentioned my PB right now is 64, Gabe's is 62. We're neck and neck. And so it's just to keep better. I want to break that 70 threshold. I've got a buddy of mine who is, I mean, these guys that I get to hang around with now, they're literally world-class catfishermen. There's a guy his nickname is Nooner. And so Nooner Hall lives about, 40 or 50 miles south of here, but we fish a lot of the same tournaments. And my goal is to beat him in a tournament. But he catches 70s like crazy. Like literally all summer long they catch 70s, and they won the Memphis on the Mississippi or whatever it's called. It's literally they've won like I don't know, it's like $20,000 first place prize. They've won it like 3 times. It's crazy, and I might be off a little bit. Maybe it's only I know it's back-to-back champions. I know maybe they're going for back-to-back right now. But he catches 70s like I catch 30s. Mm-hmm. And so that's my goal is where I can get to where, we go out and literally like we catch 30s. I want to be able to get to where we catch 70s like that.
See, so one of the things in the fishing world that I've kind of realized throughout my life, right, is like, at a young age, you start off and you have this goal of, you always want to catch a, for striped bass, 28 incher, right? And then you're like, oh, I got to break 35. Then you got to break, now we're talking inches. Then I was like, oh, you got to catch 40. But once you break that 40-inch barrier, every fish after that is 40 inches. It might take you 2 years to get there. And then once you break it, you're there. Then my goal was, if I catch a 50, it'll be like the monarch of my life.
Right.
Now it's every other week you go out and you catch a 50-pounder. I said, if I catch a 60, I'm hanging up my rod. And it's like, it's just crazy. But once you get to that point, you just keep doing it because you've evolved your skills, and you just so once you break that, like now you're at 60. How many times have you come close to breaking 60? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy.
Well, that's a good point, because we built a big shop last year for our big boat, right? So we put it inside and all this stuff. And we started to develop, on the one side walls of the shop was our wall of fame. And so, because it's that, that shop is devoted to fishing. My back room back here is devoted to archery, and I keep them separate. And so the wall of fame is just for fishing. And we broke it for like anything over 50. The picture of us, that we take that day gets framed and put on the wall. And now it's all, that wall is covered with 50s. To your point,
Yeah. So. No, I think it's incredible. It's just crazy to hear, though, honestly, that Greg Staggs is sitting on the Outdoor Drive saying that he's gonna slow it down and he's gonna go and pick up the rod and reel. And it's every podcast that you hear with you is, you've been writing for how many years on mobile hunting and this, that, and the other thing. Like, it's just, it's cool. And I'm really, honestly, genuinely looking forward to seeing you kind of captivate this next goal and kind of move the mountains. I mean, it's something.
It'll be fun. And here's the cool thing, man. It's the first time I've ever revealed that goal. So it was said here first on the Outdoor Drive, because I've not mentioned it to anybody. I literally keep a list. A lot of people know I've got my YouTube channel. I've got a list of about, I think I've got 36 videos in the mobile hunting world of ideas that I'm really passionate about, that I want to shoot a video on, to add to my one sticking playlist, and how to, and tips and techniques and things like that. And I'm doing a video on a mock scrape this year with a couple of guys. A lot of people know Troy Pottinger, Dalton Woods, a friend of mine. I'm going to get those two guys together. We're going to do a mock scrape video. So I've got ideas I still want to do. I've got things I want to do in the mobile hunting world. But when those 36 videos are done and those 2 deer get killed, it's a combination of those two, dude, I'm going to be chasing blue cats hard all the time, not just in the off season when there's nothing else to do.
You let me know when it's time, because I'm buying a plane ticket. I got to see what this is all about.
You're welcome to jump on back. I love bringing people. I had a guy who invited me to go turkey hunting down in Alabama, or Mississippi rather, and he was such a gracious host, and so I returned the favor and had him come up, and he caught his first blue cat bumping. He did it. I didn't hand him the rod. He felt the bite and reeled down on him and got him. And he was a 15-pounder, and he was like, "Oh my God, that thing fought like a mule." I did. That was a 15-pounder. Like, wait till you hook into a 50.
I say that about striped bass fishing in the same, and I'll extend this invite right here in public. Like, you come on up here, you and Gabe, and come out, and we'll bring you out fishing, and we'll go chase giant striped bass, because you will. That's like, it's one of those things you have to do, right? And we take it for granted because we live right there, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. But like, when you catch the first 30-pounder, you're gonna be like, what? This is insane, because it's a different world, right? And it's probably the same. Dude, I'd go there and catch a 5-pounder, and I'd be the happy. I'd post 100 pictures. That'd be the most famous catfish in the world. I'm telling you right now. But like, it's really what it's all about, and it's just so cool. It really is. Greg, I'll ask you one last question, and you probably already know the question, but we want to know what drives you outdoors.
Dude, it's immersing yourself in nature and getting away from all the chaos of the world, and being able to step back into who I believe God made us to be, to just immerse yourself in nature and relax and step back in time and just feel what you're supposed to be. That's what drives me, man.
Absolutely. Greg, I said that was the last question, but I just want to know what our next podcast is, because I think we've hit every topic under the sun when it comes to Greg Staggs.
Have we
and
done
Staggs
a
in the
turkey?
wild.
No, I'm not enough of an expert. We kill a lot of turkeys, but it's because we run into dumb turkeys.
Yeah. Hey, I love dumb turkeys.
The more likely you're going to find a dumb one.
Yeah, that's our philosophy is, hey, Shane Simpson and those guys, they can go after the smart ones. Leave us the dumb ones, and that's the ones we're going after.
I got one more question, though.
You bet.
Any ambition, or have you ever thought about catching a catfish with your bare hands?
You know what? So that's a great question, Steve. Actually, for a couple reasons, no. One is I grew up in a part of the world that has a lot of snapping turtles and cottonmouths in it. So that's number one. And then number two, I'm going to get very, some people are going to go, I'll get more of a little bit of a serious on this question. I don't relish the thought of disturbing a big spawning female on her nest. Even if you release it, right? What does that do? Does she go back to her nest? I don't know. There's a lot of research to be done there. And I love these fish so much. Any fish over 10 pounds, we automatically turn back. Mm-hmm. Every fish if people are wondering about we've been talking about 50, 60, 70 pound fish, all these 50s we've caught, every one of them's been released to fight another day. You guys listen to this have just as much chance to come up here to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, catch the same fish that we caught yesterday because he's still swimming. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm not crazy about pulling a big spawning female off her nest. Yeah. That's just me. A lot of people have made a great social media presence on it, though, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I never thought about the spawn. I never even thought about them being spawning fish, when I see it on YouTube. But I definitely 100% agree with the first part. Like, I'm not sticking my hand in a hole. Like I'm all set. Like, I'll just bust out the ugly stick.
Yeah.
Stop it. No ugly sticks.
Not interested in it one bit. We've got too many cottonmouths in the areas I grew up, and even if they're not, I just
Yeah. I
never interested.
I can't. That was one of the things. We've been invited a couple different times. Actually, Matt from Out on the Limb, he invited me down. He said, "You want to come and catch flatheads and this, that, and the other thing?" I'm like, ain't no way, man. No way. I know what's in there.
Root wads and
no. You see them old boys, they go out there, they only got 3 fingers. They said, come on with me. I said, no, I'm all set. I just can't.
It's different. Like, there's people that build boxes. We kind of mentioned that earlier. They build boxes, these fish go up in them. You probably got a good chance there's going to be a catfish up in it.
Right.
But, there's a lot of people who just go looking they're looking for old beaver dam holes and, beaver lodge holes and root wads and, no, that's a different breed of outdoor guy for me.
Do you think that's what some of the people that have large social media presence do? Is that how they do it? Do they have boxes under there and then they just bust out the camera and bust a YouTube video out when they're pulling it out of a box?
100%. So I won't beat around the bush. Everybody knows Hannah Barron. Everybody loves to watch her, right? For a variety of reasons, obviously. But she does catch a lot of big fish. Her dad Jeff. They just posted a video not too long ago about how they build their boxes, how they put them. They actually built a big, huge box, and they put it down, and they mark them with GPS. They know exactly where that box is, and they go to that box, and they're actually, so she will actually put her leg down there and kind of trap the fish in, and they're reaching in a wooden box.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, two's his own, man, but it's just not a thing for me. I get it and I understand it. I mean, it's the same reason.
That. And that at least, but see, that flathead or that, occasionally they'll get a blue. Most of the times they're getting flatheads. That fish is going in that box to spawn.
Right.
And so, again, it's one of those, maybe there's, maybe we'll get some feedback. People put in the comments of this, wherever this is streaming to, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Maybe they can come in the comments and go, no, that doesn't hurt them at all. And it's so great, But I'm just, until we know unequivocally for sure that that's not bothering a spawning fish, it's not my cup of tea, just because I love these fish so much. And I'm not saying Hannah doesn't love the fish.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, right? I just, I just don't know what that does to the spawning fish.
It's the same thing, right, for us as avid turkey hunters. It's the same thing as after hunting after 12 o'clock, you're messing with the hens or whatever. There's a million and one catch 22s to the whole thing, and I get it and I understand it. It's the same with us with big stripers. Like you just kind of, there's certain points in the off season, in the winter when they're in those spawning, feeding areas, migration. You just don't mess with them, and I'm against fishing them in those times. I mean, it's just the way that it is.
It's the same way in Missouri. We have a lot. I'm sure a lot of states are like this. That if a deer is located or isolated in a particular area due to floodwaters, it's illegal. Like if the floodwaters have come up so much that he's on a little island of land due to rising floodwaters, it's illegal to harvest or kill that buck or deer.
Oh.
Because so Missouri has that law, and there are probably other surrounding states that do as well. And to be honest with you, I'm fine with that law, because that's not it's not matching wits with someone. It's not me beating them 1-to-1, right? And that's kind of the way I view the whole. That's not the time to go after them.
It's not fair chase at that point, right? And whatever your definition of fair chase is.
Yep, exactly.
Greg, this has been absolutely incredible. I hope that some people can kind of take something with it, maybe run with it. Might not be catfishing, might be something else, but, there's a lot of really good information. And as always, it's great having you on and diving into a subject, and I'm looking forward to see what the next subject is.
It's going to be this one for a while, man.
Yeah, it's all right. And as we fine-tune the skills and break it down, we can do a part 2 of it. And,
that sounds good, brother.
We appreciate it. If you can just let everybody know where they can find you, kind of follow along with your fishing and your hunting stuff, and
as we taper down, there's going to be more and more fishing stuff on the channel. So that channel is Staggs in the Wild, STAGGS in the Wild. So it's on YouTube. If you type in Greg Staggs in Google or YouTube, that'll come up too.
Awesome. Well, everybody else, go and check out Greg, and thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.